I put out a short after Monday Night Football. Raiders versus Detroit Lions. And I was actually very angry about the usage of Davante Adams in that game, which was he was not used at all. There was not a single pass thrown to a wide receiver by the Raiders in the entire first half. And there were 4 total receptions by wide receivers between Davante Adams, Jacoby Myers, and Hunter Renfrow. Davante Adams did lose 2 very wide open passes that were overthrown by Jimmy Garoppolo, and people are putting a lot of the blame on Jimmy Garoppolo. I don't put all the blame on Jimmy Garoppolo. I put some of the blame on Jimmy Garoppolo because he's coming off an injury, first of all. Second of all, he's never been that great at throwing deep passes. Third of all, the first time that he proves that he can't make a deep pass, why are you still calling deep passes Josh McDaniels and Mick Lombardi? But they did. It didn't work. Davante Adams has seemed mad the last few weeks. I hate the way that the Las Vegas Raiders have handled the Davante Adams situation. They brought in Davante Adams to play for his favorite team when he was growing up and to play with his college best friend, Derek Carr. Then the Raiders immediately turn around and trade Derek Carr. So not a great situation. I understand Davante Adams' frustration. I wouldn't blame him if he sat out. The Monday night game just made me very angry. And Chuss did have thoughts about that and kind of was looking at defending Josh McDaniels a bit, which I don't know if you still want to.
I mean, they're all fired now. Yeah. So because on basically what my argument was on Monday was it was similar to like what the argument is going on in Pittsburgh right now. Is it Mike Tomlin's fault or is it Matt Canada's fault? In this case, I was wondering if it was McDaniels' fault or if it was Lombardi's fault. Because at a point, is it the offensive coordinator calling all of these plays and McDaniels not stepping up, or is McDaniels jumping in and calling certain plays and overthrowing Lombardi, or how is it working? Obviously, the offense wasn't working right. And over in Pittsburgh, Mike Tomlin doesn't really jump into plays a lot, so it's mostly 95% of the time Matt Canada. Sometimes it is Mike Tomlin, but very, very seldom, or very, very minimal is it Mike Tomlin calling these plays. It's always Matt Canada. So I was going off of the record, and I was talking to Josh about it, and I was kind of talking to him, and I kind of just mentioned, I was like, would it be McDaniels that you're blaming, or would it be Lombardi? But now I don't really think it matters who I defend or who I argue for, because they're both fired now. They're both gone because Mick Lombardi did get fired today. McDaniels got fired last night, as well as the general manager? I don't know.
General manager Dave Ziegler, who is the one who brought in Davante Adams and traded Derek Carr. He was fired.
So they pretty much cleaned house, which is kind of insane to me because McDaniels is just going to be sitting on his couch for the next 3 years, just getting paid. So because he had guaranteed money. So that's going to be a very interesting look for how the Raiders are going to be for the next couple of seasons. But that's just the problem with guaranteed money. You just never know how that's going to play out. I mean, we're seeing that with Deshaun Watson in Cleveland. So, you hope it works out, but sometimes it doesn't always work out for you in the best way possible. But going back to my original claim, I don't really think there's, I wasn't necessarily defending McDaniels, but I definitely wasn't against. Yeah, because I felt like they needed a clean house, but I wasn't going to be the one to say because I'm not a Raiders fan. But they just have not looked good over the last couple of weeks. So
they've looked awful. Like there are bad teams, and then there are teams where you're like, I feel bad for the players.
And I think they finally saw that on Monday night. I feel like the Raiders organization was like, wait a second, we can't do this. We're not this bad of a team. So, or we need to fix something. And granted, the guarantee money sucks and all of that stuff sucks and stuff like that. But I mean, I feel like the move that they did was pretty good, getting rid of both of them. But nonetheless, it doesn't matter if it was the offensive coordinator calling these plays. It doesn't matter if it was McDaniels calling the plays, because my original claim was, who do you fire in that case? Well, they fired both of them. So it doesn't matter. So that's pretty much my whole thing just went out the window, which is fine. But
my thing is like, yes, these are like all the greatest athletes on earth. Even the third stringers are phenomenal athletes. But the play calling was horrible. Like there were games where it was like, does Josh McDaniels realize that he has a future Hall of Famer on his roster? Why is he not getting the ball to him? Why is Devontae Adams not getting the ball? He's wide open. Why? And if Jimmy G can't make the deep throw, have him go across the middle. Why is Hunter Renfrow suddenly not getting passes?
Yeah, Hunter Renfrow always was a big part of their offense for years.
Derek Carr took all of the blame every year, and now Derek Carr's not there. Jimmy Garoppolo's there, which, sure, Jimmy Garoppolo is not Patrick Mahomes. But also, he helped the 49ers go to a Super Bowl. A good coach can work with him. And you got to work with your coaches or your quarterback's strengths. You got to work with your players' strengths. Now they benched Jimmy Garoppolo for Aiden O'Connell.
Which I think is kind of interesting. But, I mean, I've seen people talk about it. They're kind of looking at it as what do you have to lose at this point in the season? So
he's a rookie. We got a lot of rookies playing this week.
Yeah, which is kind of – it's kind of interesting to see, but there's been a lot of switches though, because Ritter got benched for Heineke as well. So I mean, there's been a lot of quarterbacks, moving around and stuff like that. Obviously, we have Will Levis starting. There's definitely a lot of quarterback changes going on right now in the NFL. It's kind of crazy because it was always very consistent for a while. Like you have that consistency, and then all of a sudden, like you can notice the change because all the great quarterbacks retired. Because for years it was always like, you had Drew Brees and like Tom Brady, Ben Roethlisberger, you could even go as far back as saying Peyton Manning, Eli Manning, like none of these guys were going anywhere. And then all of a sudden they all left, they all retired. And now you're like, all right, we got to figure out quarterback situations. And now we have all these young guys out there. Like, I feel like the oldest starting quarterback right now has got to be in like their early 30s, mid 30s, maybe. Cause actually was designated starter this season.
I think it's Russell Wilson or Kirk Cousins.
Yeah,
they're 2012.
Yeah, so it would be like 35, 34. Like that's not even that
Rodgers.
Okay, but
Rodgers, I guess Rodgers went over.
So Rodgers went over my head. Yeah,
for those 4 snaps, he was the oldest.
Yeah, so and we'll see. I'm guessing he's coming back next year.
Joe Douglas said he's coming back this year.
And shout out to my boy Connor, who I don't know if you saw this, but in our fantasy league decided to pick up Aaron Rodgers this week.
I saw that. Bold
Not
move.
Really sure why, because
I
don't expect him to start at any point during the championships.
We'll see what Stan says, but anyway, getting back to Thursday night football, you're right. There is a ton, or Monday night football. There's been a ton of quarterback changes. We're getting into let somebody cook season, I think.
Yeah,
we're gonna have a lot of these
coming back again.
We're gonna have a lot of these moves here, but we cannot talk about Monday Night Football. And as much as the Raiders annoyed me, we also got to talk about the Detroit Lions, who put on a phenomenal game. It was so fun to watch. Sam Laporta, I wish the Bengals got him. I wanted them to get Jahmyr Gibbs, and Jahmyr Gibbs went too early, but we could have gotten Sam Laporta, and I really wanted them to get Michael Mayer, and I'm still not against Michael Mayer because he's on the Raiders, and I just feel bad for him, but Sam Laporta has been so good, and our tight end position has been so bad. But Tanner Hudson's up from the practice squad. We're going to go. But Sam Laporta did great on Monday Night Football. Phenomenal player. Amon-Ra St. Brown did great. Jared Goff has done fantastic, just all around. What a recovery he's had.
How about Jahmyr Gibbs?
Jahmyr Gibbs, yes. There was coming in early. People were like, this dude sucks. Like, why do we have him?
I wasn't gonna, for me, like over the last couple of weeks, even in my fantasy, the one time I did the fantasy video, which I just haven't had time to do any fantasy analysis. It's just been way too difficult. But that one time I did do fantasy, a lot of people were panicking about Jahmyr Gibbs. And I always said it from the get-go. Jahmyr Gibbs just needs a little bit of time. He's a rookie, and he's starting behind David Montgomery, who they signed in the offseason. If David Montgomery signed for a couple of years, eventually they're going to use them as 50%, 50%, and now is going to end up being the time because David Montgomery is now hurt. They weren't going to start Gibbs week 1 or week 2 because why would you let like a couple $1 million or however much that contract was for David Montgomery just sit as a second string? That's kind of what the Steelers were doing last year when they at first refused to put in Kenny Pickett because they paid all that money for Mitch. So well, not all that money, but they paid money instead of like a rookie contract or whatever. So they wanted to get their use out of him. But for this, David Montgomery is a very talented back, but he is prone to injury. And now, since David Montgomery is now hurt, he might be back next week. They're on bye this week, but Jahmyr Gibbs is taking that load, and we've seen immense improvement from him over these last couple of weeks without David Montgomery. So expect big things to come from him over time. Heck, I mean, I wouldn't even be surprised if like this time next year, we might be talking about a David Montgomery trade. Like, I note that because, I mean, granted, it's kind of a bold thing to say, but like if you have Gibbs that's supposed to be a stud and you still have David Montgomery who's still young, do you need both running backs? You know, because I mean, they have decent running backs over there. So, I mean, like, it's not like they're struggling. So they might be able to get away with something like a trade, but we'll see. We'll cross that bridge when we get there next year. So,
well, I mean, there's also a beauty to a 2-man backfield though, because you can have
which is true.
Both guys be rested, less likely for injury, and you've got 2 explosive runners.
My favorite was the Saints, 2016 or 2017. Alvin Kamara and Melvin Gordon ran that backfield. It was insane. Alvin Kamara would get all of the main rushes, and Melvin Gordon would get all the touchdowns. It was just insane. Like that, it was just something so unique that nobody really talks about too much, just because it wasn't a relevant season for them. So.
That's why I think Christian McCaffrey has been so successful in San Francisco. With the Panthers, he was getting injured all the time because he was like 90% of the yeah. And now in San Francisco, it's like, okay, we can still run it, but we can use Debo, or we can use Ayuk, or we can bring in Eli Mitchell.
Or George Kittle as your tight end, you know, whatever. They can
do different stuff and still allow Christian McCaffrey to be that explosive runner. And
don't they still have Kyle Juszczyk as well?
Yeah, fullback. They're one of the full teams, one of the few teams that still have a fullback position.
Yeah, so I mean it's definitely a very like they have all of those pieces, you know. So
definitely. But Jahmyr Gibbs looked fantastic on Monday Night Football. Marcus Peters had a great pick 6 off of Jared Goff, though. Like, Jared Goff doesn't throw a lot of interceptions, but that ball was just bad. I don't know if the route runner just got lost or what happened, but Marcus Peters dropped on that ball, and he was just gone.
It was a good play.
It was a beautiful play. If there was one thing to say about the Raiders defense that night, it was Marcus Peters did well on that play, and then Max Crosby's a beast. Those are 2 other guys I just feel bad for that they're on the team because I like watching them play, but
yeah,
that team's painful to watch. Well,
that team might be rebuilding for a little.
Thanks for watching that video, guys. If you want to check out a most recent full episode of No Buts About It, that's going to be right over here. Yeah, right there. Check that out. And if you just want to see more short clips, we're going to have one right over here for you to watch. Check out No Buts About It on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anywhere you listen to podcasts, so you can listen to us on the go. Once again, have a great day and go do something nice for someone.